The massive transport ship docked at Galactic Coalition Academy's orbital station with a gentle hiss. Inside, 3 human cadets stood nervously by the airlock, their expressions a mix of awe and determination. "Remember what Commander Rodriguez said," Mira Chen whispered, adjusting her uniform collar. "No matter what they say, we represent Earth." Dio Adebayo nodded, his tall frame tense with anticipation. First humans ever accepted to the academy. No pressure, right? Jackson Miller, the youngest of the 3, simply cracked his knuckles. Let them underestimate us. That's always worked in humanity's favor. The airlock opened with a pneumatic whoosh, revealing a vast docking bay filled with the most diverse collection of alien species any human had ever seen in one place. Tall, slender beings with iridescent skin glided by on anti-gravity discs. Stocky creatures with 4 arms carried equipment with casual ease. Floating jellyfish-like organisms communicated through pulses of bioluminescence, and every single one of them stopped to stare at the humans. "Look at the Deathworlders," came a translated whisper through their neural interfaces. "So fragile-looking for creatures from such a savage planet. I heard they still use projectile weapons on their homeworld. Why would the Council even allow them here? They'll never grasp advanced combat doctrine." Mira squared her shoulders and stepped forward, her companions falling in beside her. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, giving them a subtle advantage they didn't acknowledge. Their bodies evolved on a planet that most galactic species considered brutally harsh, were already adapting. A tall, blue-skinned official approached them, tablet in hand. "Cadets Chen, Adebayo, and Miller?" The alien's voice was surprisingly melodious, though the translator gave it a flat tone. "I am Assistant Director Zivtol. Follow me for processing." They followed Zivtol through corridors of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields, passing training rooms where alien cadets performed feats of technology that seemed like magic. Some were practicing with weapons that bent light itself, while others manipulated gravity fields with casual gestures. "Your species has only achieved interstellar travel within the last 50 years, Zivtol said without looking back. "Most cadets here come from civilizations with thousands of years of spacefaring history. Expectations for your performance are appropriately calibrated." Jackson clenched his jaw but remained silent. Dio's eyes narrowed slightly. Mira simply absorbed the information, her mind already cataloging weaknesses in the Academy's approach. The processing room was clinically sterile. 3 aliens in medical uniforms waited with scanning equipment. "Your biology requires special accommodations," one said, not bothering to hide their distaste. "Higher oxygen levels, increased caloric intake, primitive sleep cycles." "We'll manage," Mira replied coolly. The scans took longer than expected. One of the medical officers whistled a strange tone. "Your bone density is remarkable," they said, genuine surprise in their voice. "And your muscle fiber structure unusual. Your species evolved under truly extreme conditions." "Earth isn't extreme to us," Dio said with a slight smile. "It's home." After processing, they were led to a large amphitheater where hundreds of alien cadets had gathered. At the center stood a commanding figure, whose species the humans couldn't identify, tall with metallic scales and 6 eyes arranged in a circle around a central crest. "Welcome to Galactic Coalition Academy," the figure's voice boomed without need for amplification. "I am Grand Admiral Zextral, Academy Commandant. You represent the finest your worlds have to offer. Here you will be forged into the peacekeepers of the galaxy." The Admiral's 6 eyes seemed to find the humans in the crowd. "Some of you come from worlds we classify as garden planets, ideal conditions that have allowed your civilizations to flourish. Others come from standard worlds with manageable challenges, and for the first time, we welcome cadets from a death world." Murmur ran through the assembly. The humans stood straighter. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world," Zextral continued. "High gravity, extreme weather patterns, dangerous fauna, and a history of constant warfare. These cadets have survived, conditions that would kill many of you within hours. Whether this makes them suitable for coalition service remains to be seen." Jackson leaned toward his companions. "Friendly welcome," he muttered. The orientation continued with squad assignments. The humans listened as cadets were called into elite units based on their world's military histories and technological achievements. Omega Squad, Zextral finally announced. Cadet Chen, Mira, Earth. Cadet Adebayo, Dio, Earth. Cadet Miller, Jackson, Earth. Only one other name was called. Cadet Zelthorn, Fraxis 4. A thin, gray-skinned alien with 4 arms and large, compound eyes approached them with obvious reluctance. "I have been assigned as your squad leader," Zelthorn said in a clipped Torsum. Omega Squad is traditionally reserved for species with minimal military potential. Mira stepped forward and offered her hand, a human gesture she knew the alien wouldn't understand. "We look forward to working together, Squad Leader Zelthorn." The alien stared at her extended hand with confusion before turning away. "Your quarters are in Section D, Level 7. Report there immediately for further instructions." As Zelthorn walked away, Dio shook his head. "This is going to be harder than we thought." "Good," Jackson said. "I didn't come all this way for easy." Their quarters were located in the farthest section of the academy, a clear indication of their status. The room was designed for species with very different needs than humans. The beds were too short, the atmospheric controls set for methane breathers, and the lighting calibrated for eyes sensitive to ultraviolet. "They're testing us," Mira said, immediately adjusting the controls. "Seeing if we'll complain." Dio unpacked his small bag, pulling out a worn book, Sun Tzu's The Art of War, a copy that had belonged to his great-grandfather. "First rule of combat," he said, running his fingers over the ancient pages. "Know yourself and know your enemy." Jackson was already examining the Academy handbook on his datapad. "And I think I found our first advantage. Look at the combat doctrine they teach here." The others gathered around. The screen showed elegant formations, sophisticated technology, and perfect coordination. "See it?" Jackson asked. "Everything is based on ideal conditions. Perfect communication, perfect technology, perfect execution." Mira nodded slowly. "And what happens when conditions aren't perfect?" "Exactly," Dio said, a smile spreading across his face. "They've never had to adapt like we have on Earth. They've never had to improvise when everything goes wrong." Outside, their window, the vast expanse of stars stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, observers from Earth were watching, hoping. The humans stood together, 3 Deathworlders in a galaxy that had no idea what was coming. "Tomorrow," Mira said, "we start showing them what humans can do." The first week at Galactic Coalition Academy passed in a blur of classes, physical assessments, and thinly veiled contempt from the other cadets. Omega Squad remained isolated, eating alone in the mess hall and training in the hours when other squads had rest periods. "Another exciting day in paradise," Jackson said, dropping his tray on their table. The food was nutrient-complete but bland, adapted for human consumption, but without any consideration for taste. Mira looked up from her datapad. "Save your complaints, I found something interesting." Dio leaned in. "What is it?" "The Academy's training calendar. In exactly 23 days, there's a major exercise scheduled. No details yet, but it's marked as culminating assessment for first-year cadets." Their conversation paused as Zelthorn approached, hesitating before sitting at their table. After a week of minimal interaction, this was unexpected. "Is something wrong, Squad Leader?" Mira asked politely. Zelthorn's compound eyes reflected the light oddly. "I have information about the upcoming exercise." The humans exchanged glances. "Cousin completed the academy 3 cycles ago," Zelthorn continued, lowering his voice. "The first-year culminating exercise is always the same, a wilderness survival and combat simulation on Erebus 4. "What's Erebus 4? Jackson asked. "A moon with no permanent settlements, varied terrain, from ice fields to volcanic plains. The exercise lasts 3 standard days. Teams compete to secure objectives while evading or defeating rival squads." Dio's eyes lit up. "An actual field exercise? Not just simulations?" "Yes," Zelthorn said. But Omega Squad has never advanced past the first day. It is expected that we will fail quickly. Mira studied their squad leader. Why are you telling us this? Selthorn's four hands made a complex gesture. I have watched you train. You are not what I expected from Deathworlders. Is that a compliment? Jackson asked with a slight smile. It is an observation, Selthorn replied. If we are to avoid immediate elimination, we should prepare differently than past Omega squads. The conversation was interrupted by a chime throughout the academy. Grand Admiral Zextral's voice followed. All cadets report to Central Assembly Hall immediately. Exercise briefing will commence in 30 minutes. The assembly hall filled quickly with excited cadets. When the Grand Admiral appeared on the central platform, silence fell instantly. Cadets of the Galactic Coalition Academy, Zextral began. In 3 days you will participate in the Erebus Challenge, a test of your tactical abilities, teamwork, and combat readiness. A holographic display activated above the platform, showing a rugged moon with swirling atmospheric patterns. Erebus IV, the Admiral continued. 20 competing squads, 72 hours, multiple objectives scattered across 6 terrain zones. Your performance will be observed by coalition military leaders from 17 systems. The display changed to show equipment loadouts and rules of engagement. Each squad will receive standard survival and combat gear. Non-lethal weapons only. Capture enemy squad members for additional points. Secure objective locations for primary scoring. The squad with the highest point total after 72 hours or the last squad with active members will be declared the victor. Murmurs spread through the assembly as squads began discussing strategy. Omega Squad remained silent, watching the reactions of others. One final note, Admiral Zexitral said, his 6 eyes scanning the crowd. Weather conditions on Erebus IV are expected to be challenging. Electromagnetic storms may disrupt communications and advanced targeting systems. Teams should prepare accordingly. As they left the assembly, Mira pulled her squad mates into an empty corridor. Did you hear that? Electromagnetic storms. Dio nodded. Disrupted communications, disrupted targeting systems. Exactly what most of these species rely on completely, Jackson added. But we're used to operating without tech advantages. Selthorn looked confused. This is a disadvantage for everyone. Not for humans, Mira said. On Earth, we train for communications blackouts. We have backup systems, manual targeting skills, and navigation without computer assistance. And, Dio added, I've been studying Erebus IV's geological surveys. The terrain is similar to several Earth environments. Volcanic regions like Hawaii, tundra like Alaska, swamps like the Everglades. Jackson grinned. Environments that would kill most garden worlders but are just another Tuesday for us. For the next 3 days, Omega Squad prepared differently than the others. While elite squads practiced complex maneuvers requiring perfect coordination, the humans focused on basic survival skills, terrain adaptation, and improvised weapons. In the equipment bay, they modified their standard-issue gear, reinforcing weak points, adding manual backup systems, and creating hidden pouches for extra supplies. What are you doing to your equipment? The voice came from behind them. A tall, purple-skinned alien in an instructor's uniform stood watching them with 4 narrowed eyes. Modifications, sir, Mira replied calmly. Within regulation parameters. The instructor approached, examining their work. This is not standard protocol. These alterations could compromise system integrity. With respect, sir, Dio said. The regulations permit functional modifications that don't affect core performance. Metrics. Deathworlders, the instructor hissed. Always looking for advantages. Report to administrative control for disciplinary review. The humans began to pack up their tools when Zelthorn stepped forward unexpectedly. Sir, he said, his voice firmer than they'd ever heard it. As Omega Squad leader, I authorize these modifications based on Article 7, Section 3 of the Competition Guidelines, Adaptation for Species-Specific Requirements. The instructor's eyes blinked in sequence. You support this primitive approach? I support winning, sir, Zelthorn replied. These cadets have demonstrated knowledge of environments similar to Erebus 4. Their approach, while unconventional, may prove effective. After a tense moment, the instructor turned away. On your head be it, squad leader. When you fail, remember it was your choice to follow Deathworlder tactics. When the instructor left, the humans turned to Zelthorn in surprise. Thank you, Mira said. Zelthorn's gray skin flushed slightly. I have observed 23 training sessions where you demonstrated skills not taught at the academy. Your approach is intriguing. Jackson offered his hand, the human gesture of friendship. Welcome to Omega Squad, Zell. Really with us this time. After a moment's hesitation, Zelthorn extended one of his 4 hands. Your species uses physical contact to establish trust. Interesting. That night, while other squads celebrated pre-competition, Omega Squad gathered in their quarters around a physical map Dio had drawn. We'll deploy here, Mira said, pointing to a region near a mountain range. The electromagnetic storms will be strongest in this valley. Most squads will avoid it. But we'll go straight in, Jackson finished. Use the disruption to our advantage. Zelthorn studied the map. The dominant strategy will be to secure the nearest objective and establish a defensive position. Alpha, squad has won this way for 12 consecutive years. Then we don't play their game, Dio said. We'll move quickly between objectives, never staying in one place long enough to be surrounded. Guerrilla tactics, Mira explained, seeing Zelthorn's confusion, hit and run. It's how smaller forces defeat larger ones on Earth. As lights dimmed for the Academy's night cycle, the humans continued planning. For the first time since arriving, they felt confident. The galaxy might call Earth a death world, but that harsh cradle had prepared them for exactly this kind of challenge. On the other side of the Academy in the instructors' quarters, Admiral Zexatral reviewed the day's reports. Omega Squad, he muttered. Humans, show me what Deathworlders can do. The deployment shuttle shuddered as it entered Erebus 4's turbulent atmosphere. Inside, Omega Squad checked their gear one final time. The humans wore modified environmental suits with reinforced joints and manual backup systems. Zelthorn had adopted some of their modifications, though he still relied heavily on his standard-issue equipment. Deployment in 60 seconds, announced the automated pilot. Prepare for drop. Jackson secured his pack. Remember, most squads will head for the nearest objective markers. We go in the opposite direction, straight into the storm belt. The other squads think like soldiers from Garden Worlds, Mira added. They expect perfect conditions and clear communication. Dio nodded. We think like Earth soldiers, expect everything to go wrong and have backups for your backups. Zelthorn's compound eyes reflected the shuttle's red warning lights. 3 elite squads have specifically targeted us for early elimination. They consider defeating Deathworlders to be prestigious. The shuttle doors opened with a hydraulic hiss, revealing Erebus IV's bleak landscape below, jagged mountains, steaming volcanic vents, and swirling electromagnetic clouds that pulsed with eerie colors. Drop zone reached. Good luck, Omega Squad, the shuttle AI announced with what sounded like pity in its synthesized voice. One by one they jumped, their descent slowed by anti-gravity modules. As they neared the surface, the first electromagnetic pulse hit, temporarily disabling their comms. Right on schedule, Mira said after they landed, checking her manual compass. Storm's intensifying. Most teams will hunker down and wait it out. Dio consulted his hand-drawn map. Nearest objective is 7 kilometers east, but 3 other squads were dropped closer. They'll have it secured by now. We're not going for nearest, Jackson reminded them. We're going for the one no one expects anyone to try for first day, the summit cache. Zelthorn's antennae twitched nervously. The mountain objective, through the heaviest storm concentration? No squad has successfully reached it before the second day. Exactly why we're going there, Mira said, grinning. No one will expect it. They moved quickly through the rough terrain, using natural features for cover. The humans' Earth-evolved bodies handled the slightly lower gravity with ease, allowing them to move faster and carry more equipment than the exercise designers had anticipated. 2 hours into their trek, their motion sensors alerted them to approaching signatures. Another squad moving perpendicular to their path. Delta Squad, Zelthorn whispered, his enhanced vision identifying their markings. Exilix and 3 Procyons. They're heading for the valley objective. Let them pass, Mira instructed. We don't want to engage yet. But as Delta Squad moved through a narrow ravine below them, their leader suddenly stopped, antenna extended. I sense heat signatures. Omega Squad is nearby. So much for stealth, Jackson muttered. They've got thermal detection. New plan, Mira decided quickly. Dio, remember Rio de Janeiro? Dio smiled. Urban combat training, sound and fury. Before Zelthorn could ask what they meant, Dio had pulled several small devices from his pack. Cover your ears, he warned, before throwing them into the ravine. The devices erupted with blinding light and thunderous sound, amplified by the ravine walls. Delta Squad's communications immediately filled with panicked shouting. Their auditory range is 3 times more sensitive than ours, Dio explained to Zelthorn. They're completely disoriented. Taking advantage of the chaos, Omega Squad quickly secured positions above the ravine, using non-lethal stun nets, a standard Academy issue that most squads saved for stationary defense. They captured 2 Delta Squad members before the others could retreat. Prisoner secure protocol, Mira said, activating the Academy safety system that would transport their captives to the observation station. The captured aliens vanished in flashes of light, automatically adding points to Omega's score. First blood to the Deathworlders, Jackson said, checking their tactical display. That should confuse the other teams. By midday, they had reached the base of the mountain that held their objective. The electromagnetic storm had intensified, rendering advanced targeting systems and communications nearly useless. Most squads had gone into defensive positions to wait it out. The path up is exposed, Zelthorn noted, studying the steep slope. We will be visible to any squad with functioning visuals. Then we don't use the path, Mira said, pulling climbing equipment from her pack. We scale the cliff face. Zelthorn's eyes widened. That's a 700-meter vertical climb through storm conditions. On Earth, we call that Tuesday morning training, Jackson joked, already securing his ropes. The climb was grueling. Twice they had to flatten themselves against the rock as search drones passed overhead. The storm intensified, pelting them with stinging particles and creating disorienting electrical displays in the air around them. For the humans, it was challenging, but manageable. For Zelthorn, whose species evolved on a low-gravity world with stable weather patterns, it was a revelation. He watched in amazement as his human teammates methodically tackled each obstacle, never complaining, always finding a way forward. How do you know what to do? He asked during a brief rest on a narrow ledge. There is no protocol for this situation in Academy training. Dio secured another line before answering. Earth has every environment you can imagine. Mountains higher than this, storms worse than this. We don't follow protocols, we adapt to conditions. 4 hours later, they crested the summit, the first team to reach the mountain objective. The cache was secured in a small shelter half buried in ice. I can't believe we made it, Zelthorn said, his voice filled with wonder. Don't celebrate yet, Mira cautioned. Now we have to defend it. They quickly transformed the shelter into a defensible position, using techniques developed in Earth's long history of warfare. They created false heat signatures to confuse thermal scanners. They set trip lines with noisemakers along likely approach roads. They established sniper positions with clear lines of fire. Now we wait, Jackson said, settling into his position. They didn't wait long. An hour before dusk, their perimeter alerts triggered. 3 squads were approaching from different directions, a coordinated attack. That's Alpha, Gamma, and Epsilon, Zelthorn identified, using his species' natural ability to see at extreme distances. The 3 highest-ranked teams, they formed an alliance against us. Dio checked his makeshift weather sensors. Storms, reaching peak intensity. Their coordination will be minimal. Mira nodded. Perfect. Implement Earth Defense Pattern Sierra. The attacking squads moved with precise military formation, exactly as they had been trained at the academy. They approached in waves, expecting standard defensive tactics. What they encountered instead was something from humanity's long history of combat innovation. Omega Squad had created terrain traps that separated the attacking teams. They used the storm's electromagnetic properties to create false sensor readings. When the attackers tried to use standard flanking maneuvers, they found hidden stun traps waiting for them. On the observation deck, Academy instructors watched in stunned silence as the elite squad's careful strategies collapsed into confusion. "What are those humans doing?" one instructor asked, unable to categorize their tactics. Grand Admiral Zexatral leaned forward, 6 eyes narrowed in concentration. "Something we've never seen before." By nightfall, Omega Squad had captured 6 more cadets and successfully defended the mountain objective. The remaining attackers had retreated to regroup, shocked by their failure. When the day's scores appeared on the Academy's tracking system, the observation deck erupted in disbelief. Omega Squad, traditionally eliminated within hours, was leading by an unprecedented margin. "Send drones to monitor them continuously," the Admiral ordered. "I want to know exactly how Deathworlders fight." Back on the mountain, Omega Squad settled in for the night. While Zelthorn marveled at their success, the humans were already planning their next move. "Day 1 was about survival," Mira said quietly. "Day 2 is when we show them what humanity can really do." Dawn broke over Erebus 4, revealing a landscape transformed by the overnight storm. Electric blue lightning still flickered across the dark clouds, but the worst had passed. Omega Squad was already awake, having taken turns keeping watch through the night, another primitive Earth practice that confused Zelthorn. "Your species requires sleep cycles. Why interrupt them?" he had asked during Mira's watch. "Because enemies don't wait for convenient times to attack," she had explained. "On Earth, predators often strike when you're most vulnerable." Now, as they prepared for the day ahead, their tactical display showed significant movement throughout the exercise zone. Word of Omega's unexpected success had spread. "They're reorganizing," Dio observed, studying the display. "Look at the pattern. Elite squads are moving toward central positions, forming a net." Jackson nodded. "They're trying to trap us if we leave the mountain." Mira chewed thoughtfully on a ration bar. "So everyone expects us to stay and defend this position." "It's the logical approach," Zelthorn said. "We have high ground, good visibility, and a secured objective." The humans exchanged glances. "Then we do the illogical," Mira decided. "We abandon this position and go on the offensive." Zelthorn's antennae twitched in alarm. "Abandon a secured objective? That contradicts all Academy tactical doctrine." "Exactly," Jackson grinned. "They'll never expect it." 20 minutes later, they had concealed evidence of their departure and were descending the mountain via a treacherous ravine on the opposite side from where they had climbed up. Instead of using the anti-gravity units that would leave energy signatures, they rappelled down using manual equipment. Halfway down, disaster struck. A section of ice shelf broke loose, causing a minor avalanche. Zelthorn lost his footing and fell, crashing onto a rocky outcrop 15 meters below. "Zel!" Mira called, quickly descending to him. The alien lay crumpled, one of his 4 arms bent at an unnatural angle. His environmental suit showed warning indicators for a leg injury as well. "I cannot continue," Zelthorn said, his voice strained. "You must leave me. Call for extraction." Jackson reached them, examining the injuries. "Broken arm, possibly fractured leg. Extraction would disqualify our entire squad." "Then you must continue without me," Zelthorn insisted. "I will activate my emergency beacon." "No," Dio said firmly, joining them. "On Earth, we don't leave teammates behind." Jackson nodded. "I'll carry him." Zelthorn's compound eyes widened. "Impossible. My body mass exceeds safe carrying capacity for a human." "Watch me," Jackson said simply, handing his pack to Dio. With careful movements, he lifted the injured alien onto his back in what humans called a fireman's carry. "Your endoskeleton should not be able to support this load," Zelthorn said in disbelief as Jackson began moving down the slope with him. "Earth gravity is 1.2 times stronger than here," Jackson replied, his voice steady despite the strain. And I grew up in the Andes Mountains. This is nothing. They continued their descent more carefully. By midday, they had reached the base of the mountain and were confronted with their next challenge, a vast swamp of bubbling mud that separated them from the next objective. The toxicity levels are dangerous, Zelthorn warned, checking readings on his suit. This environment would kill most species within minutes of exposure. Mira tested the mud with an extended tool. Sulfur content, methane pockets, reminds me of the volcanic regions back home. We can traverse it, Dio said, studying his map. It's only 3 kilometers across. With our modified suits, we should be fine. But what about Zell? Jackson asked, still carrying the injured alien. Mira thought for a moment, then began unpacking materials from their kits. We'll build a sled, distribute his weight. Using parts from their climbing equipment and spare materials, they constructed a makeshift travois that could be pulled across the swamp surface. Jackson carefully placed Zelthorn on it. I don't understand, Zelthorn said as they secured him. Why risk yourselves? Military logic dictates that you should maximize squad effectiveness by... We're not leaving you, Dio interrupted. That's final. They began their careful journey across the swamp, testing each step before committing their weight. Halfway across, their motion sensors alerted them to an approaching squad. It's Alpha Squad, Mira whispered, checking the signature. Led by Vorzek. The Thalasian prince, Jackson asked, still pulling Zelthorn's travois. The one who's won the last 3 exercise championships. The same, Zelthorn confirmed. He has never been defeated. Alpha Squad moved with perfect formation along the edge of the swamp, clearly intending to intercept Omega when they emerged. Their equipment was top of the line, and their coordination flawless. They're staying on solid ground, Dio observed. They don't want to risk the swamp. Smart, but predictable, Mira said, a plan forming. Dio, remember your training in sensory manipulation? Dio smiled slowly. The neural interface exploit? Will it work on their species? All Academy-issue neural interfaces use the same basic Thalaxian technology, Zelthorn provided. They amplify natural senses, and anything that can be amplified can be overloaded, Dio concluded. He pulled a small device from his pack, a modified communications unit that he had reprogrammed during their preparation days. What will it do? Zelthorn asked. Their neural interfaces enhance their natural senses, Dio explained. This sends a calibration signal that temporarily confuses the enhancement algorithm. For about 3 minutes, they'll experience sensory disorientation. Not harmful, Mira added, seeing Zelthorn's concern. Just extremely confusing. Like trying to walk. After spinning in circles, Dio activated the device. Moments later, they watched through binoculars as Alpha Squad's perfect formation dissolved into chaos. Warriors stumbled, unable to coordinate their movements. Their leader, Vorzek, could be seen gesturing frantically as his squad scattered in confusion. Now, Mira ordered. Straight through the swamp. They'll never follow us there. They moved quickly, pulling Zelthorn across the dangerous terrain. By the time Alpha Squad recovered, Omega had disappeared into a dense mist rising from the swamp. Hours later, as night fell, they reached their second objective, a supply cache hidden in the ruins of an abandoned outpost. They were exhausted, but triumphant. I still don't understand, Zelthorn said as they treated his injuries with the medical supplies from the cache. You risked tactical advantage to save me. You carried me through a toxic environment. Why? Because that's what humans do, Jackson said simply. We adapt, we overcome, and we never leave our own behind. On the observation deck, the Academy instructors watched in stunned silence. The scoreboard showed something unprecedented. Alpha Squad, undefeated for 12 consecutive years, had officially surrendered rather than continue pursuing Omega. Impossible, one instructor muttered. Grand Admiral Zextral's 6 eyes blinked, in sequence. No, he said quietly. Not impossible, simply human. Back on Erebus 4, Vorzek's formal surrender message played on Omega's communications unit. We withdraw from competition against Omega Squad. Their tactics are unorthodox and effective. We acknowledge their superior adaptation to combat conditions. Jackson grinned at his teammates. 1 down. 19 to go, Mira replied, already planning their next move. As the second night of the exercise began, the Academy's scoring system updated once more. Omega Squad now led by the largest margin in the history of the Erebus Challenge. And, across the battlefield, the remaining squads were beginning to worry. What kind of creatures had the Academy unleashed upon them, and how could anyone stop these Deathworlders? The third day of the Erebus Challenge dawned with an eerie calm. The electromagnetic storms had temporarily subsided, allowing communication systems to function at near-normal capacity. For most squads, this was a welcome relief. For Omega Squad, it presented a new challenge. They can coordinate now, Mira said, studying their tactical display. After securing their second objective point overnight, they had taken refuge in a cave system near the volcanic region of Erebus IV. Zelthorn's injuries had been treated with medical supplies from the cache, and he could now move with assistance. 17. Squads remain active, Dio reported, and look at their movement patterns. The display showed something unprecedented in the history of the Erebus Challenge. All remaining squads were converging toward Omega's position from different directions. They've formed an alliance, Jackson said, whistling low. Everyone against us. Is that allowed? Mira asked, looking to Zelthorn. The alien nodded slowly. There is no rule against temporary alliances, but in 12 years of records, I've never seen a complete alliance of all remaining squads. Dio smiled grimly. We must have really scared them. We've changed the game, Mira agreed. They can't beat us individually, so they're combining forces. Jackson checked their supplies. We're outnumbered 17 to 1. Even with our advantages, those aren't good odds. The squad fell silent, considering their options. Retreat would only delay the inevitable. Standing and fighting would mean certain defeat against such overwhelming numbers. The situation seemed impossible. Then Zelthorn spoke up, his voice stronger than before. There is another way. Something no squad has ever tried. The humans turned, to him, surprised. The Academy combat doctrine emphasizes victory through superior position or force, Zelthorn continued. But watching you humans, I've learned there are other paths to victory. What if we target their confidence instead of their position? Mira leaned forward, intrigued. Psychological warfare. Exactly, Zelthorn said. Most species in the Coalition have evolved in stable environments. Their neural patterns respond poorly to uncertainty and fear. And you have information that could help us exploit that? Jackson asked. Zelthorn's four-fingered hand activated his data pad, displaying biological information about the various species they faced. As a Fraxian, I was required to study xenobiology. Each species has specific sensory vulnerabilities and cultural taboos. Dio's eyes lit up. Operation Thunderstorm. What's that? Zelthorn asked. An ancient Earth military doctrine, Dio explained. When outnumbered, you don't fight the enemy's strength. You attack their will to fight. For the next hour, they developed their strategy, combining Zelthorn's biological knowledge with human tactical innovation. By midday, as the Allied squads closed in on their position, Omega was ready. They expect us to hide or run, Mira said as they made final preparations. Instead, we take the fight to them. The Allied squads had established a perimeter around Omega's suspected location, slowly tightening the noose. Their commanders communicated confidently, certain that their combined strength would finally eliminate the troublesome humans. The first sign that something was wrong came when their communications began picking up strange sounds, low, rhythmic drumming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. What is that noise? Demanded Vorzek, who had rejoined the hunt after his squad's surrender was rejected by the Alliance leadership. No one could locate the source. The drumming grew louder, joined by occasional shrieks and howls that triggered primal fear responses. In several species, earth hunting calls, Dio explained to Zelthorn as they monitored the effect from their hidden position. We've placed sonic devices throughout the area, amplifying sounds that would be normal in Earth's predator-rich environments. Next came the visual disruptions. Using materials from their environment, the humans had created dozens of false heat, signatures that appeared and disappeared on thermal scans. Shadow movements flickered at the edge of vision, never quite substantial enough to target. "They're everywhere," came a panicked voice over the Allied communication channel. "No, they're nowhere," corrected another. "It's a trick." Confusion spread through the Allied ranks. Species with heightened senses suffered most. What was merely disorienting to some was physically painful to others. The neat formations began to break down as squad leaders argued over the best response. The final phase of Operation Thunderstorm began when the Alliance detected a massive energy signature moving toward them from the volcanic region. Their sensors showed something huge approaching, a threat that seemed to exceed anything 3 humans could produce. "What is that reading?" demanded an Allied commander. "Unknown," came the response. "But it's bigger than anything in the exercise parameters." In reality, Jackson had modified their equipment to create an energy field that mimicked a much larger force, amplified by the natural electromagnetic properties of the volcanic vents. It was a bluff, but a convincing one. As panic spread through, the Allied ranks Omega Squad made their move. Moving with the silent efficiency they had perfected on Earth, they targeted squad leaders one by one. Within 30 minutes, 5 Allied commanders had been captured using stun nets and immediately transported to the observation station. Without leadership, the remaining squads fell into disarray. Some broke away from the Alliance, attempting to secure positions on their own. Others maintained formation but became defensive rather than offensive, unsure what they were even fighting. By late afternoon, something extraordinary happened. The commander of Gamma Squad, the 3rd highest-ranked team, activated his surrender signal. "This is Commander Zalvir of Gamma Squad," his message stated. "We formally surrender to Omega Squad. Their tactical superiority is undeniable." One by one, other squads followed suit. Each surrender added points to Omega's already substantial lead. By dusk, 12 of the 17 squads had officially withdrawn from the competition, rather than continue facing the human psychological warfare. On ice, the observation deck, chaos reigned among the instructors and visiting military officials. "This cannot be allowed," protested one instructor. "They're using tactics outside Academy doctrine." "Show me where in the rules it prohibits psychological warfare," Grand Admiral Zexitral replied calmly, all 6 eyes fixed on the monitors showing Omega's progress. The remaining Allied squads, now reduced to 5, attempted a final coordinated attack as night fell. They charged Omega's position with their full remaining strength, only to find it empty. The humans had once again changed position while their enemies were distracted. As the attackers searched in confusion, Omega struck from behind, capturing 3 more squad leaders before disappearing again into the darkness. In the early hours before dawn, something unexpected happened. As Omega Squad was setting up their next position, they encountered a group of Allied cadets who had become lost in the darkness. The aliens were suffering from exposure to Erebus IV's harsh environment, their environmental suits damaged during earlier skirmishes. Without hesitation, Mira ordered her squad to assist them. Using emergency medical supplies, they treated the injured aliens. Jackson shared their limited rations. Dio helped repair their damaged equipment. "Why are you helping us?" asked one bewildered alien. "We are your enemies." "On Earth," Mira explained. "When the battle is over, we don't see enemies anymore, just people who need help." This final act, compassion and victory, accomplished what even their brilliant tactics could not. When the alien cadets were well enough to continue, they formally surrendered, not out of fear or defeat, but out of respect. By morning, only 2 squads remained opposed to Omega. The Erebus challenge had become something no one had anticipated, a demonstration not just of human combat prowess but of humanity's complex moral code. "Tomorrow is the final day," Zelthorn said as they prepared for another night. What's your plan? We've shown them how humans fight, Mira replied with a smile. Now we show them how humans win. The final day of the Erebus Challenge dawned with an announcement that shocked everyone. 15 of the original 20 squads had officially surrendered to Omega. Only 2 squads remained in opposition. Beta Squad, composed of warriors from the militaristic Dravak Collective, and Sigma Squad, a specialized unit of tactical geniuses from the quantum academies of Mentauri. On the observation deck, military leaders from 17 systems argued heatedly about what they were witnessing. This is unprecedented, declared the Thalasian admiral, his scaled skin flushed with agitation. No squad has ever achieved this level of dominance. They must be using unauthorized techniques, insisted another observer. Deathworlders are known for their creative interpretation of rules. Grand Admiral Zextral silenced the debate with a gesture. I have reviewed all footage. Omega Squad has violated no regulations. Their methods are unusual, but legitimate. Then how do you explain their success? Demanded a representative from the Dravak Collective. The Admiral's 6 eyes blinked thoughtfully. Perhaps we should ask them ourselves. On the surface of Erebus, therefore, Omega Squad was implementing their final strategy. They had secured 4 of the 6 possible objectives and held a commanding lead in points from surrenders and captures. Victory was mathematically assured. We could just wait out the clock, Jackson suggested as they took shelter in a rocky outcrop. We've already won. But that's not why we came here, Mira replied. We didn't just come to win, we came to change how they see us, how they see humanity. Dio nodded. One final demonstration then. Zelthorn, now able to move without assistance, studied their tactical display. Beta and Sigma squads have combined forces. They've established a defensive position at the central objective, the most heavily fortified location in the exercise zone. Perfect, Mira said. That's exactly where we want them. Rather than trying to sneak up on their opponents, Omega Squad did something no one expected. They sent a message. This is Omega Squad to Beta and Sigma, Mira's voice transmitted clearly across the communications network. We're approaching your position openly. We propose a final engagement on equal terms. No ambushes, no tricks, just skill against skill. The response came quickly. We accept your challenge, Deathworlders. Approach the central clearing. Let us end this properly. As Omega Squad walked openly toward the central objective, observers from all sides watched in fascination. Even the cadets who had surrendered were permitted to observe the final confrontation through the Academy's monitoring system. The clearing was a flat, open space surrounded by defensive barriers. An ideal location for a conventional showdown. Beta and Sigma squads had arranged themselves in textbook formation, weapons ready, their tactics straight from the Academy manual. Omega Squad arrived without attempt at concealment. They stood at the edge of the clearing, the 3 humans and their Fraxian teammate presenting an unusual but united front. Before we begin, Mira called out, we offer you one chance to surrender honorably. Laughter echoed from the combined squads. 8 elite warriors against 4 misfits, called back the Beta Squad leader. Your success so far has made you overconfident, human. Mira nodded to her teammates. Operation Thunderclap. What happened? Next would be studied in the Academy for generations to come. The humans didn't charge or take cover as expected. Instead, they implemented a strategy pulled from Earth's ancient military history, a psychological and tactical approach that predated even humanity's earliest space flights. First came the sound, a haunting battle cry that Jackson produced from deep in his chest, a sound that had once echoed across Earth's battlefields from Mongolia to Scotland. The alien cadets flinched, their sensitive hearing disrupted by frequencies they had never encountered. Then came movement, not the direct charge they expected, but an unpredictable weaving pattern that Dio executed with perfect precision, making targeting nearly impossible. Their neural interfaces, designed to predict conventional movement patterns, couldn't adjust to the seemingly random but carefully calculated path. Finally came Mira's approach, a flanking maneuver using natural cover, so effectively that she seemed to disappear and reappear at will, exploiting blind spots in the aliens' visual fields that Academy training had never accounted for. Working together with Zelthorn, who provided crucial biological insights about their opponent's vulnerabilities, the humans systematically dismantled the combined squad's defenses. They didn't target the strongest points as expected. They exploited the smallest weaknesses, creating cascading failures in the aliens' carefully constructed defense. Within 15 minutes, it was over. 6 of the 8 opposing cadets had been captured, while the remaining 2 were cornered with no possibility of escape. The Beta Squad leader lowered his weapon slowly, his expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning understanding. "We surrender," he said simply. "The battle is yours." As the final surrender registered in the Academy's scoring system, a chime sounded throughout the exercise zone. Grand Admiral Zexatral's voice followed. "The Erebus challenge is officially complete. All participants will be transported to the Yair debriefing station immediately." Light enveloped the combatants as the transport system activated. Moments later, they materialized in a large chamber where the Admiral and assembled military observers waited. "Omega Squad," the Admiral's voice resonated through the room. "Step forward." The humans and Zelthorn advanced, standing at attention before the gathered officials. "In 300 years of Academy history," Zextral continued, "no squad has achieved what you have accomplished in 3 days. You have earned the highest score ever recorded in the Erebus Challenge. You have forced us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about combat doctrine." The Admiral's 6 eyes focused intently on them. "Explain yourselves." Mira stepped forward, her voice clear and confident. "With respect, Admiral, we simply applied principles that humans have learned through our evolution on Earth. We didn't win because we're stronger or smarter. We won because we're adaptable." "Elaborate," the Admiral commanded. "Earth is classified as a death world because it's harsh and unpredictable," Mira explained. "But those conditions didn't just shape our bodies, they shaped our thinking. Humans learned that rigid protocols fail when conditions change. We learned to improvise, to think beyond conventional approaches, to use whatever advantages we find. Our history is filled with examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through adaptability," Dio added. "From Hannibal crossing the Alps to modern special operations. We studied thousands of years of Earth's military history and applied those lessons here." The observation room fell silent as the implications sank in. It wasn't just that the humans had won. They had demonstrated an entirely different approach to warfare, one that the Coalition had never considered. "And you," the Admiral turned to Zelthorn, "a Fraxian from a garden world. How did you contribute to this success?" Zelthorn straightened proudly. "I learned from them, Admiral. I set aside what I thought I knew and embraced a new perspective. My knowledge combined with their approach created something greater than either alone." Days later, the Galactic Coalition Academy issued an unprecedented announcement. Humans were being reclassified from auxiliary potential to essential combat instructors. Earth's military history became mandatory study for all officer candidates, and perhaps most significantly, for the first time in the Academy's history, a Deathworlder perspective was added to the Combat Doctrine Committee. As Omega Squad prepared for their second year at the Academy, applications flooded in from cadets across the galaxy requesting to train under human instruction. The 3 cadets who had arrived as curiosities were now viewed as valuable teachers. "I still don't understand one thing," Zelthorn said as they unpacked in their new, much larger quarters. "You could have defeated Beta and Sigma squads in minutes with the tactics you used earlier. Why challenge them openly?" Mira smiled. "Because the goal wasn't just to win, Zell. It was to teach." "The best victory isn't destroying your enemy," Jackson added. "It's turning them into allies." "An old Earth saying," Dio explained. "If you want peace, prepare for war. But what that really means is, if you want true peace, understand war so well that others recognize the wisdom in avoiding it altogether." Outside their window, stars glittered in the vastness of space. Somewhere among them was Earth, a harsh, dangerous world that had produced not just fierce warriors, but teachers who could change an entire galaxy's understanding of combat and cooperation. The Deathworlders had arrived, and nothing in the Coalition would ever be the same again.